Good afternoon, Dr. Angrist. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Thanks for being here today. Could you, just so the jury gets an idea of why you're testifying today and your background, could you just tell them a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. I am a licensed and practicing physician for the state of Illinois since 1976. I have a diploma in pathology with qualifications in morbid anatomy, clinical pathology, and forensic pathology. And I regularly do consulting for some different medical centers, including Cook County Hospital.
So you spent a lot of time not only in the academic study of medicine, but you've also done a lot of hands-on practice of it as well.
Yes.
And do you have a license to practice medicine?
Yes.
How long have you been licensed?
Approximately 22 years.
Do you, when you consult for Cook County Hospital, do you charge a fee for that?
Yes.
And are you charging a fee today for your services?
I am.
Well, let me phrase it this way. You also did a personal examination of Mr. Ramirez,
Yes, I did.
and you examined his gunshot wound.
Mhm.
What year was that?
That was in 1998.
So that would have been after he was treated at the hospital, subsequently you had an exam.
Yes.
How long was Mr. Ramirez in the hospital for?
It was approximately a month and a half.
When you when you examined Mr. Ramirez, what were some of the things you noticed during that exam?
Well, I observed the scar from his entry wound, and I noted that it was rather jagged in appearance. This generally indicates some motion between the body and the bullet at the time of connection. And
did you also review the medical records as well?
I did.
Cook County Hospital records?
Yes, and they noted the same.
Okay, was there anything additional that you found in there about his treatment or his gunshot wound?
Well, when the wound was received, it did travel in at the shoulder, but it hit the scapula and moved into a downward trajectory and wound up lodging in the pericardium, just touching his myocardium or his heart.
Could have this been a fatal shot?
Yes, certainly it was very close to being fatal.
And it was near the heart, you had just said?
Yes.
Where was Mr. Ramirez shot? Could you tell us again?
He was shot in the scapular region of his right shoulder.
So demonstrate for the jury, and was it his right shoulder?
Yes.
So right about here?
Yes.
And you said the bullet traveled from there to his heart. So it would have come in here, gone completely across the length of his torso and come to this left side near his heart.
Yes.
You talked about the entry wound being irregularly shaped and that indicated motion.
That's correct.
What type of motion would it take for a wound like that to happen?
Any sort of motion, as long as the body was not stable at the time that it was shot. So had he been holding still when he received that gunshot wound, the hole would have been small and circular, and instead it indicates that he was moving at the time of the injury.
And you've done other examinations of people with gunshot wounds.
Yes.
And so you're able to tell the difference between one that appears to have had motion when the person was shot and one where they would have been static.
Yes, it's a very clear distinction between the two.
Based on your review of the medical records, your resume of having been around the practice of pathology and forensics, what is your conclusion about how Mr. Ramirez was shot?
My conclusion with the information that I was given is that he was likely in a lower position than that of the shooter at the time and in motion, perhaps attempting to get up from the ground.
Maybe we could demonstrate that for the jury if you want to get up. So, if I'm, and you're familiar with Mr. Ramirez's testimony that he was getting up off of the ground?
Yes.
So if I'm Mr. Ramirez, I've just been struck and I've fallen down here on the ground onto my back, and you're Officer Waldman, if you could make a gun toward me if I was on my back and I was getting up, this motion of getting from down to up, would that be enough to create the entry wound that you saw in Mr. Ramirez?
Yes, I believe so.
You also said the trajectory was downward. Would the configuration we're in right now, would that be enough to create the downward trajectory that you
Yes,
saw?
as you can see, my arms are angled downward in order to point towards your shoulder.
And then a second hypothetical, if I was standing and you were to shoot me in the back, would you be able to create that same downward trajectory now that we're evenly on the same plane?
I personally would not. I am in fact going upward, but a person of a similar height would be more head-on towards the shoulder because you tend to hold your gun at shoulder length, or shoulder height rather.
Thank you. So, your opinion is that what Mr. Ramirez testified about him getting up off of the ground is entirely consistent with your examination of his gunshot wound?
Yes, I believe so.
No further questions.